it turns out if you write crap in the title, we do quite well.
I know, who'd have thought it, eh? That's all we needed to do. We should have just done that from day one. By the way, I thought I'd share with, because we can't do the whole sock game thing in the office. I got given some great socks for my birthday.
Okay,
the first one has got coffee machines on. No, not coffee machines, cafetières on. The
percolator.
The next one has got bread. Being a celiac, I'm not sure about that one, but...
Isn't that a bit like... What's celiac version of racist?
Yeah, that's true. And this one's got cereal on it, which again, wheat-based, so not good for me. But I thought they were very colourful, and thank you, Happy Sock Company, and my wife for that one. So there we go.
Oh, that's a great present.
It's easier for a shark to yank you off your surfboard if you've got longer hair. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. Just trailing in the water.
Or you can use it for climbing. It might come in useful. You can use it as extra anchor points now.
Yeah. Or if I need to fashion a rope out.
Maybe don't do that one. Episode insert number. Maybe we'll make this one 10 minutes.
Just follow your competitors.
The end.
Done.
8 seconds.
All right. 5,
4, 3, 2, 1. We were not in sync then. I don't think we'll be doing any moon launches or space rockets.
My days of applying to NASA are gone.
Hello and welcome to eCommerce Matters, brought to you by BlackCurve. We help e-commerce businesses make pricing decisions. Today's title is, I've launched an online business, now what? Hey Rob, you alright?
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good. I was straight into thinking, now what? What do I do? So I thought it would be good to launch an outdoor business. Do you reckon? How do you fancy going into business with me?
We certainly know the market, so they do say go where your passions lie.
I won't pan left on my webcam because. I could probably start an outdoor shop with a lot of the equipment that I have, but then I certainly would need to use our how to price in a supply poor economy because I only have one of everything. So that's maybe I have to have skyrocket prices for that.
Stock management rather than pricing issues.
Exactly. But enough about my buying habits. It always seems to be my buying habits, doesn't it? So we are, full disclosure to the listeners, we very much come from a pricing angle, right? So Rob, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you what e-commerce platform should I use, what technology should I use to manage my payment gateway. That's don't worry. Although I hope you have quizzed up on that.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. You read enough around the topic anyway, so I'm sure we could have a good discussion about that. But really, I thought it would be good to have a session today on maybe companies that have used the opportunity in the lockdown phase to launch their e-commerce business, maybe use the lockdown to give their online business more focus, or maybe those businesses that are doing well, but want to kind of get to the next stage, if you will, and are maybe sometime perhaps on the smaller end from an online business perspective. I've bought my technology. I'm up and running. I'm on Shopify, Magento, BigCommerce, WooCommerce. I'll stop naming e-commerce platforms. They all end in commerce, and I've installed that. I'm getting some traffic. I might have spent some money on marketing. I'm winning orders. Okay. Now what do I do? I need to price my products. Where do I start, or where do I go from here? Discuss. Yeah. That's generally a university question. Wow. Discuss.
That felt a bit like an essay, really. That's a really interesting one. So let's wind that back a little bit, because I think the context is super useful in that we are in a period where the buzzwords, a lot of the podcasts or news I read around retail is digital transformation or just going digital. As really post-COVID and during COVID, people have rushed to have an online presence. And this kind of really has nicely coincided with the rise of these kind of shopping ecosystems, whether it's Shopify or BigCommerce or whoever, where it really is like you can spin up a shop in 10 minutes. It's kind of crazy how well that problem's been solved. And you see this in the rise of, I don't know how much YouTube you watch, but the amount of people advertising to me how I can sell products on Amazon or whatever and make £1 million overnight is kind of unreal. So let's say that is you. You've watched your YouTube video and you've built out your ecosystem, and actually you've won some orders, which is, I mean, we know from starting a business, but generating any revenue from a standing start is actually very impressive. So
have your gin and tonic, have your celebration, because that should be celebrated.
And then I guess where we've ended up actually is where we kind of excel, which is the optimization of business processes rather than the 0 point problem, if that makes sense. So you got a number of issues really, and the major one is, okay, I've got some stock. It's either in someone else's warehouse or in my shed. And I've got a marketplace to put it in. I've got a website. How much do I charge for it? And that is kind of the key question. That standing start problem is actually harder than you might think, in the sense that at that point, you don't really know anything about the market at all, right? You might have sold 1 or 2 things, but like what's more likely actually is that you've decided that you've spotted a gap in the market, you've built your infrastructure, and you're about to turn the site live. What price do you put on it? That's the key question for me.
I mean, what I might say at this point is, don't worry, because actually you look at the behemoths out there of in the e-commerce and retail world, and you sort of think, well, surely from a pricing perspective, they've all got it right now. And because they've got tons of data to make their decisions on. But actually, more often than not, although their sales volumes are very high on individual products, sometimes they themselves haven't changed the price very often. Okay, so therefore they're still on this journey, almost at the same point of view that they have obviously beaten the march in terms of launching their business a lot before you, investing in all the other areas to make yourselves a successful company. But they're still actually asking this same fundamental question: what's the right price point for this product? And they might not have the historical data just because they've been trading for a long time.
I would also say that actually, if we take an example of you spinning a business up today, your infrastructure will make it much easier for you to change prices. A lot of the reason why this doesn't happen is because of like creaky business processes. So if it's a brick and click, every price change may mean that every item in the shop everywhere in the country or in a region has to then be repriced, right? Like it's a very different paradigm to someone running a pure play e-com store. So you can actually, through automation of pricing and through automation of data and insights and the rest of it, you can get a real competitive edge over some of these bigger stores.
Yeah, I think if you can invest at this stage in technology to enable you to do more with less to a certain extent, and that will help you really rapidly accelerate the growth of your business. And one of the reasons why you'll see some of the big names failing now and some of the other names doing well is because those that have invested in technology at a core, and that's at every stage of their business. Okay, it's not just their online website, it's every touch point they've invested in technology. They are doing well. Now, we ourselves have talked about, from a pricing perspective, you're searching for market efficiency because you've invested in pricing automation. You're prodding the bear. You're asking the question. You're asking the market a question. You're getting a response, and that in itself, if you've invested in that, then our research shows that the more pricing decisions you make, out of it, you're generally doing better than your counterparts, right? To nick my one of my old career counsellors' recent posts that he did at a previous company that I worked with at Accenture, he used the term digital dawdlers. Okay, now again, the one that just sort of their studies is very much at big retailers, right? And that might not be your aspirations to get there. It might be. But the ones that are doing better are not digital dawdlers. The ones that are doing better are digital, I don't know, mavericks maybe, or I don't know if that's the right way to describe it.
Well, certainly digital first, or digital forward. And I think it's been it's an interesting point to touch on, because it's the correct digital as well. Because I was listening to something where they were talking about how stores have been spent the last 5 years investing in touch, right? Everything has to be tactile. You have to be able to pick up and look at it, and that is not coming back for a little while. I mean, post-COVID, so there's a huge amount. So there's always this balancing act between how much do I invest and when? I think actually I'm unsurprisingly quite a big fan of process automation. So of which I see price management as part of that, because it fundamentally is quite low risk in that regard. Like, the ceiling is high if you tune it, and we'll talk about that a bit later in the podcast, I guess. But like, just by automating a simple pricing process that keeps you up with the market, you just save yourself a load of time. And so if it's you running your outdoor store and you're running roughly within the rules or limits that you want to, you don't have to worry about that now, and you can focus on your digital marketing or finding new products or doing something strategic, rather than, I know you like Excel spreadsheets, but manually crunching.
No comment.
Excel. So it's not, for me, it's really not just a question of just being digital. It's a question of like, what digital? And I think that's going to be the real interesting fallout, certainly for people like us, out of this kind of transition period that we find ourselves in. Is like, what is critical e-commerce tooling and or retail tooling, and what isn't?
Yeah, and obviously it all comes with a different price tag associated to it, right? If you're just starting out, you're not going to go in and spend a few $100,000 on a pricing. Well, you might do, depends how deep your pockets are, right? But there are tons of tools out there, ours included, that start, at a very obtainable level, monetary, and then you work up as you grow and as you mature. You can take on more features, and you can go from there. So I certainly feel that the automation, it's making sure you're making decisions for the right purpose, right? I mean, from a pricing perspective, there's many reasons that people go and say, right, I want to get a pricing tool to help me. Okay, right. Fundamentally, you hope it's because actually, you want to have the right price points. You're maximizing margin. But actually, more often than not, it's one of the initial reasons people are exploring using pricing technology is this saving time aspect.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And if you're a one-man band, 5-man band, 10-man band, that's critical for you to save time. You've got to maximize bang for buck. And, our pricing technology typically saves 2 to 3 days per week of pricing management. If you've got 5 products, you're not going to, you might be spending that amount of time analyzing it, but if you've got 500, 1,000 products, to do it justice, to do your pricing operation justice, you've got to spend, especially if you're doing it manually, you should be spending all your time on it. Whereas then if you're using a solution to help you, that's when it drops the amount of days that you need to spend on, quote unquote, maybe some of the grunt work associated to pricing decisions. And then that frees you up to do some of the more strategic stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it kind of tees us up quite nicely for the question. Really, is like what do I do now? And I think what we're both saying is that if you're a smaller business, taking on some kind of pricing automation technology is a really good idea, right? Just to free your time up. So the next question kind of is like, what do you do with it? Where does one get one from? What do I need for it? Right? So the simplest answer is that, say you've joined one of these, you're using Shopify, you're using BigCommerce, Magento, whoever. There are ecosystems there, right? Where you have app stores like you do on your phone. It's part of the great thing that I think Shopify in particular have done, but also BigCommerce are doing very well as well, is like building out these kind of ecosystems along with their storefronts so that you get the tooling to support it. So I'd say the first thing you do is you go to one of these app stores and have a look around. And it really is terrifyingly easy to get up and running. Again, we're saying people don't have much time, but you can do it with a click of a button, really, like simply like downloading an app on your phone. But this is so really what you need to spend your time thinking is, okay, what's my business logic? What do I want to do, right? Let's say you're doing market entry, which is what we're talking about. You've got 10,000 tents or however many, 100 tents or whatever.
I thought we agreed I only had one tent to sell.
Okay, sure. But it seems a bit, okay, you're going to be at the lower end of the price optimization mark. But say you got a few tents to sell and you really don't know what price to put it back. So the best thing to do to think about how would you approach it as a human problem, right? Google it. Go on Google Shopping, find out what people are selling them for. Look at the kind of brands you think are similar to you, and that's important because if you're starting out, you're not going to have the kind of brand loyalty that someone like, I don't know, Taunton Leisure or someone who's got an established presence, right?
Like AO.com, or actually we're sticking on theme because
yeah,
we're sticking on theme. I see what you did there. So like Cotswolds Outdoors or
there we go.
Someone like that.
Ellis Brigham or something, right? And so that should impact your pricing decision in some regard. The other thing you got to do is make sure that you're comparing the right tent to the right tent, and you do that naturally as a human, quite straightforwardly. But you don't want to price a regatta coat against an Arc'teryx one, right? Or for example, because there's a premium attached to one of those. And so this very human process is how you'd manage 10, 20, 100 products, right, to start out. And actually, there's quite a lot of software out there, ours included, that will just initially automate that process for you. It will just find a like-for-like match your products to it, set the price. And if you're just starting off, really, that's probably where you want to start, right? In terms of, because you don't really know the market enough, you don't know the data enough, and there's probably more pressing problems such as supply, advertising, tuning your ad spend. So for what, 100 quid a month-ish, 200 quid a month, depending on quality, quantity, and all the rest of it, you can get a pretty nice pricing solution that will just tick away in the background, make sure you make the amount of money you want to make, and make sure you track your competitors, right? And that's kind of where I'd say Phillips Outdoor Shop should start off. Now, there is one thing I just got to jump in with that is important, because we see a lot of new market entrants really messing this up. Make sure you calculate your cost price properly, right? It's really, really important.
You've turned into the war poster. We need you now. So you're clearly very passionate about this.
Data. But seriously, because it promotes a really, really toxic behavior in a marketplace that we've seen. I'm not going to go into examples because I don't think it's fair to kind of draw those marketplaces out. But if you get easy entrance marketplaces through drop shipping, when people are experimenting with that kind of technology, they often think revenue and profit are the same. You're making money, that's great. So you get people selling below cost, or not factoring, or not calculating full cost, including I don't know, tax, shipping, blah 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 blah. And that really can hammer your profitability. So the two things are, it's really back to what we spoke about in the competitor data episode. Really, is the core of a lot of what we do at BlackCurve. Because pricing is so sensitive to data, you have to really make sure that your data is good.
Yeah, you can't make minimum margin calculations and put safeguards in place if you don't have your cost data, or if you haven't validated your cost data. And I think when when you're coming from maybe a spreadsheet world, that first initial setup, do spend that time doing that data hygiene. And then also, if as your business grows, instill data hygiene inside your organization as you bring on more individuals. And that's not just a pricing. That's in any part of your business, right? So are we calling my business Philip Outdoors Business? Is that what Philip's Outdoor World? Is that what we've gone for?
You can call it. It's your business, mate. You can call it what you want.
Oh, but I'm not very good at naming things. I even had to ask my wife to name the company name.
I've got it. It's Big Phil's Outdoor Emporium.
Big Phil's. Okay, right. I should have to stop the exercise in the lockdown, I think, aren't I? And eat some more.
Or increase it.
That is true. I need to get Robert Dexter's CrossFit regime in place. So for those of you who don't know, that's our head of software engineering. All I'm saying is he's a very gentle person, but do not challenge him to any press up, pull up competition or anything related in that ilk, because you will lose. So unless, of course, you are a CrossFit champion, which most of us are not. So anyway, we've gone off in a different direction. So let's bring it back. So is stage one from a pricing perspective? Am I right in thinking it's about getting, before you do anything, it's about getting visibility of the marketplace. It's about working out what competitors I have, what kind of products they're selling, what price points are they selling at. And that actually tells you a lot about the market. It tells you, before you've even gone and made any pricing decisions, before you've even gone down that route, it actually tells you a lot. Now, is there anything that people should be aware of in terms of where they should look to get competitor data from? Because, there's many different avenues, right? They could go down the path of, I want a bespoke scrape of, if we stick with the theme, Cotswolds Outdoors, Ellis Brigham. I want you to go to their websites and I want you to pull their prices and scrape them. Or you could go to Google Marketplace or another marketplace. Yep. Google Shopping. So
you know me, I'm a product guy at heart, so I'm all about user journeys. But where are your customers coming from? What's your the only data that is relevant to you is the data your customers see, right? It's really that simple. You could have someone who you think a competitor is a competitor selling for half your price, but if it never comes up on your customer user journey, it's not a competitor. So I often tend to recommend against bespoke scrapes, unless you're there are certain industries where it's really important because there are a few key players and you need to be on top of them. And then you're using that data not just for pricing, but to get strategic information on those players outside of it, right? But realistically, if you're starting off, well, where's your storefront? If your storefront, say you're plugged into Facebook now it's come out, also got announcing partnerships with Shopify and BigCommerce and the rest of it. Facebook, Amazon, Google, those seem like fairly sensible starting points, maybe eBay too. It's where you should be looking, right? I mean, it's not, there's no rocket science in some way to this. It's like, where do you want your products to appear? Where are they going to appear? And that's where you should be gathering your data from.
Because also, especially if you're starting out, other than your friends and family, who you've probably bugged them for the last however many months or years about your business idea, especially if you're starting out, people are not going to know your brand, are they? So, from a personal, it's just, without sort of one data point doesn't make the rule, right? But certainly when I'm looking for stuff in the outdoor sector, there are 3 sites that I actually go directly to, because I know them. They've built brand loyalty with me. I've signed up for the newsletter. They've done all the other bits and pieces. But then what do we do? You go into Google or whatever search engine. You go into Google Shopping, and that is where, especially when you're starting, people are going to find you. They're not going to find you on bigphilsoutdooremporium.com. They're not going to be searching for that, right? Okay, so yeah. I should quickly buy that domain, shouldn't I, and put it up there.
Maybe you could sell your tent, so someone will buy.
Well, currently in the lockdown, it's cheaper for me to stay in the Ritz based on how much I've spent on it. So I should probably post lockdown. Hopefully, I managed to bring the price per night down of the tent. And also I think I'm a firm believer of maximising your capital efficient. That's sort of one of the phrases that I use in our business, and it is expensive to do bespoke scrapes. It's not like crazy expensive, but you're talking a few £1,000s a month typically upwards. Okay, you can get marketplace data. You've already mentioned, for £100 a month or so, right? And okay, fine. You can go away and do that yourself on a regular basis, but then you start to fall into which we touched upon in another podcast. The result you get depends on what time of day you look, what search term you put in, whether you've got the search term in quotations or whether you're using a Boolean term and you get into this minefield. Whereas, companies that specialize in collection will know these nuances and can get a regular feel. And one of the terms which I'm going to start using a lot more is what's the market price. Right, and although each time we go out and collect from Google Shopping, the price might be slightly different because depending on what IP address you come in, or depending on what location, or however it is, the more times you scrape, you build up a picture of what the market price is. Okay, and so that's really what you're trying to do. And best will in the world, if you've got 500 products, 1,000 products, you can't do that day in, day out, and also you can't do that for £100. Okay, or £200 or £300. So visibility is strong. Now, what do I do next?
I don't know. What do you do next? Move to the Bahamas.
You sit back and watch the money roll in.
I think you. Firstly, I can tell you've been talking to Richard. If you keep saying market price, I know where that's come from. But that we can have a debate on that on another podcast, because I have a slightly different view on that. But anyway, the interesting thing. So you touched on at the start, right? It's about market visibility and improving your understanding of your market, and that's all to me. Sorry, I'm a theoretical physicist by background. I'm super reductionist, but that's what pricing is. It's finding the point that makes you, I need a bell or something, market efficient, but like
ding.
And to do that, you need knowledge of your marketplace, right? So if you don't, so the question is, what data do you have access to? And initially, you'll have your stock data because you have your supply chain, I hope. Maybe not in your case, but maybe in most other people's. And then competitor data, if you don't know where you're starting off from, is a very easy way to go, right? And so that can start building this feedback loop that'll actually put you roughly in the right place. You should see an uptick in sales or at least some sales if you've hit the right market with the right product at the right time. If there's no demand and your prices are roughly the same as your competition, then pricing is unlikely to be the demand factor at the inventory level. You're either got to invest in ad spend, or you're stocking the wrong products, or you're not getting picked up by Google, which is always possible because of the way they're kind of scraping sets up. So let's say you've gone off and solved all those problems. You now have a functioning business, right? You're scraping some competitor data, you're using that you're just matching it, using that to manage the prices. Happy days, right? And actually, I think for a lot of people we interact with, kind of further along, this is kind of the stage they're at, right? In that they've got some competitor data, but they've probably found out through that process the pitfalls of that. In that you're kind of at the whim of your competitors. So if people have a discount, or people have to, God, at the minute, if people have to liquidate and dump stock, are you going to follow them down into a price war, right? And so these are the kind of things that you start to notice when you run a fully competitor matching strategy, in that you're not actually listening to the market behavior, you're listening to your competitors' reaction to the market, and their reaction to the market is dependent on their business, which is likely very different to yours, for a whole host of reasons, right? So the next thing to do is to start using those sales, right, to segment up your inventory, because okay, you know roughly where you're at, your prices are set at your competitors, but there'll be some products that still aren't selling. There'll be some products that are selling incredibly well, and probably a lot just kind of roughly in the middle. And you can start tweaking your pricing and using your pricing to really build your knowledge out of your landscape. So I'll give an example of that. In the, say I've got a product that I'm mid-market, right? Just matching the competitor, matching the lowest competitor that I find for my scrape, and it's not selling at all. And I just think, oh, it's weird, maybe I'll drop the price, and suddenly it rockets. What you've either found there is a data point you're not capturing, which is highly possible, right? Or there's some other thing going on in a search optimization or ad optimization algorithm, and that tiny price change has kind of flicked it in and kicked you into. And you wouldn't have found that just with pure play competitor data, because you wouldn't have known the directionality to move with. Conversely, if you've got things that are selling well and you notice your competitors are moving down, you can try holding position. And if your sales maintain, happy days, or you can either try pushing it, because your demand for those products isn't price driven. It's either it's some other factor. And so this is the bit I really like about pricing, actually, and is that you can use all these data sources to find out why I've taken over your store, why your products
it's now
behave.
Big Rob's Outdoor Emporium.
Well, medium Rob's. But why your products behave in the marketplace as they do. And that's the really cool thing, right? Because suddenly you know, okay, this is a super competitive, price sensitive product. I have to track the competition with that. And I have to work out whether the margin on that is sustainable for that product, or whether I need to stock it, or whether I look for a replacement, and all the rest of it. And without pricing, you wouldn't know that. You could have an inkling, but you wouldn't kind of know. And so that for me is like the second level of that, is just kind of layering in these other data sources to fill in the demand curve, whether it's supply, whether it's sales, or whether it's ad spend. And that, again, you can get pretty much out the box, quote unquote, from someone like us at a slightly more premium price range, but it's still pretty easy. It uses data sources that you have already in your store, so that nothing here, the only actual data source that you have to obtain that isn't from you is competitor data, stock, sales, ad spend, web traffic. All of this is data sources you control, and that's the really, really nice thing about it, because then you can curate the quality, you can make it really work for you.
And this is where you get from, well, I'm going to mention the term pricing maturity, but I'm not going to use it because I'm going to use a different term. This is, if you're starting out, using competitor data to support you with pricing decisions is your lagging indicator. When you start to use the other data sets, you start to move into the ability to being a price setter and a price leader in your market. Mm-hmm. Now, when you're starting out, that's obviously hard to do. But if you build these principles in early, you'll actually soon realize that a lot of your so-called bigger competitors might not be as mature in their pricing operation as you. And you start doing well, okay, they're going to start looking at you, and then you might be surprised that some of their decisions, you can very quickly work out whether they're following you or not, or they're, and then you start, well, hang on a minute. The the Karate Kid, so that you become the pupil becomes the master, right? That's what you're trying to achieve. And is there anything in between those two? Because I think, I've been in the pricing sector for a reasonable long time now, not as long as others, but a number of years, and getting from pupil to master does take time. You can't underestimate that. You do need to collect some amount of data to build up your capabilities. If I just have competitor data, how can I use it more effectively, maybe, if I'm just starting out?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like you said, it's a lagging indicator, but you can decouple or decode is the right word, actually, some of the insights we're talking about from it. You can look at which products have which price changes the most frequently, right? The ones that don't are probably lower demand, but probably have more opportunity or more upside, because people aren't looking at them as frequently. Things like that, you can look at when people are making price changes and kind of still a march on them if you want to. That for me is actually the really telling one often, because you see people, it's once a quarter, once every 6 months, especially for big players. And that is somewhere as a smaller business you can really hone in and target, because you know that you've got a month to, if you get ahead and steal a product off them, or steal the buy box, or steal a position of them in a search ranking, that'll maintain for a month maybe. And advertising spend aside, I should say, but if your strategy is to say to be the cheapest on certain lines, right, or match the cheapest, then you can very easily get ahead of people and they won't be adapting. So that kind of intelligence comes out of it. You can get demand from how often prices are being changed, but it's not as good. It's kind of true to the marketplace, but not true to your business. And I think there is a subtlety in that, using marketplace information assumes that all operators in the marketplace are roughly the same, and they're really not. It's likely that, say, if you're going up against the John Lewis or something, their advertising spend will dwarf yours, right? So you don't want to get into a price war with something like that, and you don't want to get into an advertising war with something like that, because it's a very easy way to lose an awful lot of money, because they can go down because of the relationships they'll have and the levels of stock they're buying. They may have a lower cost price, which means they can take a lower margin on a product.
I mean, it's to come back to the Warren Buffett type phrase. Pricing power is a critical component of a business, and if all you can do is compete on price, you've got to question why you founded that business in the first place. Because, as you've said, if you're starting out, there's people there that have deeper pockets than you, and they can just turn the screws and bleed you out, okay? Because they can afford to have a price war, and price wars don't benefit anybody. It warrants a whole different conversation, doesn't it?
They might benefit the consumer.
Well, no, to a certain extent, it doesn't. It doesn't. No, I challenge that, because what happens, businesses go out of business, they stop functioning, you have less choice, then you get into, but sometimes you get into a monopoly situation. I'm talking more doomsday, that generally what happens is people realize they've been silly, insert rude words, and and it doesn't sort it out. But because the data shows that, there's only so many tents you can sell, there's only so many walking poles you can sell, right? So that's really interesting. So I think it's critical that that when you're starting out, it might make sense then to start collecting competitor data fairly early on, even potentially before you've fully pushed the button, because that will give you a sense of, well, hang on, what are people selling? You can actually then view, well, what am I going to sell? You can then work out what are the overlaps, where do I have gaps, where do I sell stuff that they don't sell? And then that would mean that, okay, I don't have the pricing power on the products where they have the overlap, but I can actually make my own decisions on stuff that my competitors don't sell. I might buy differently.
And this, to just hone into the bespoke thing that you asked about earlier, this is a point where it may be worth doing a bespoke scrape, but not continually. If you say you're looking at inventory overlap, right? You're trying to spot opportunity. If you go to, say, Cotswolds and Ellis Brigham and or whoever, pick 3 big people, see the overlap in their inventory and segment that and see them up, you will have your cost price, right? You won't be able, you can do this in this is a really nice thing to do for a business owner, is that because you have your supplier information, you can then work out what their margin is as well as what your margin is, and you can see what their high margin goods are, what their low margin goods are, where you can compete, where you don't want to compete. So before you've even bought any stock, right, just from a supplier list and some competitor data, just from those 2 prices, you can increase the efficiency of your business dramatically, because you're not making a load of bets, right? You're tuning the bets that you want to make. I quite like that idea.
And lastly, unless we come up with any other topics, it generally happens. So we say lastly, and then we're here for another 30 minutes. You do a quick search, e-commerce pricing strategies or something like that, and hopefully up comes BlackCurve, and you see things like pricing, psychological pricing, or you see things, like rounding rules, or you'll see things like bundling, many different pricing strategies. If I'm starting out, should I worry about those?
No. What you should worry about really is being in range. I'll probably get beaten up by pricing professionals for saying this, but this is probably my own bias, but things like 1999 or 5p or whatever is probably a sensible thing to do just for an elegance perspective. For me, it's more of a design and user experience website thing, rather than you should do this, because if it really depends where you're selling, right? Because I can't remember the statistics, but if you're on Amazon, you need that buy box, because it's like 90% of the traffic goes through it. Like, you just buy the top one. I do it myself. So you need to tie in, what you need to worry about is tying in your pricing strategy alongside your ad spend and the rest of it, so you're getting visibility. I do not know whether rounding rules help visibility in any way, shape or form, but they do look nice. And there probably is a slight, you don't want to cause any friction or cognitive disconnect in any sales process. So I expect a price to be $14.99. I look at it, that's fine. If it's $14.32, I might think, why is that $14.32?
I mean, there's certainly, we could go into every single pricing strategy and look at the studies and what they're saying. I mean, there's certainly consultants out there have done studies on what numbers look nicer and attract more. And the interesting thing is, if it's rounded up, I'm talking from like £44 to £49. Weirdly, they've done studies. I think the particular one I'm thinking of was on dresses, and the 49 quid one sold more than £44, right? But I think if I hear you rightly, what we're saying is that yes, it is one of the areas that you can look at, but in terms of bang for buck and maximizing your time, don't stress about it. Don't worry. Mm-hmm. And also it depends on the market, as you mentioned. Like, if you're buying electrical goods with lots of things, you've set up an electrical goods online retailer with lots of small little widgety things, people sort of expect it to be 43p per unit, or some weird number. Whereas if you're buying if you're buying an expensive raincoat, you're gonna notice when it's £149 versus £132.50. That sort of starts to get a bit odd, doesn't it? But then it'd be interesting to see whether people buy more or less of it.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's so market dependent that, my view, it's like good digital marketing. A/B test it. Find out what works for your marketplace. I mean,
but that's it. But if you invest in the data, so if you're using your sales history, for example, this full loop, so you've got your competitor data, you've overlaid your sales history to support you with that decision. You'll know if £32.50 does better than 49 quid.
So say I sell 2 equivalent walking poles. The real issue, actually, I think you need to work. Sorry, turns out something's just triggered. We'd have one of those half-hour. Actually, the real danger with this, is price cannibalization, I think, rather than psychological behavior or rounding rules or the rest of it. I think a lot of what we see, especially newer entrants to the marketplace who don't fully understand their product set, which I think is fair. I mean, unless you've been trading for a long time with a lot of data, I'd say you probably don't fully understand it, at least in a data-driven way. It's very easy to set a price for one product that, I'm going to use Dyson Hoovers again. Right?
You forgot them last podcast. So
I know, but they're a really good one for this, because there are quite a lot of similar models, and you might make a price change and suddenly sales plummet in one and sales skyrocket in one. But that's because people have stopped buying the other one. They've started buying this one, and that is a pricing behavior that it's much more important to be on top of, I think, rather than the more psychological stuff. Because that is something that you're not. You might think you're making money through your pricing, but you're not, because you're actually taking away from somewhere else. But I think with all of this, it really is about being a good digital player in general, in the same way that you treat your advertising strategy or your messaging and your marketing. You should A/B test. You should listen to the marketplace, like change a price, see what the effect is, and monitor your inventory holistically, right? Or at least at the category level. So what does that mean for a category as a whole? I've seen a big increase here, but the category stayed stable. So where's that? What's happened? Okay, I can see that actually sales on this one have plummeted, and actually these are a competing product. So it's that kind of middle level of analysis I think is quite interesting.
Fantastic. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground. We're certainly, to avoid this going on to another hour. We started off doing these for 30 minutes, and then we've suddenly gone to an hour, and then maybe we'll be a 2-hour podcast next. So I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, Rob, as ever, for a thoughtful conversation on I've launched an online business. Now what? Just to summarise, really, it's about getting bang for your buck, and I think start out by think what's a market efficient company look like, and from an e-commerce perspective, investing in tech and investing in the right tech will help you get bang for buck and help you do more with less. Pricing technology can, for example, save you 2-3 days per week, so that's powerful, and it doesn't cost the earth. Okay, start small, don't bite off more than you can chew. Okay, fine. Absolutely. We're not saying that bundling doesn't work. We're not saying that psychological pricing doesn't work. But these are strategic initiatives that do take some time to wrangle and work out if they work for your business. So again, I'm going to say bang for buck, get the foundations in place, invest in technology such as pricing automation that enables you to rapidly collect data from the market, get a feel for what the market is, and then can support you on that journey of when do I need to maintain parity with the market, And you know what? When do I not need to maintain parity of the market? And for those new businesses out there, or those businesses who have been going for a few years and are not the behemoths, don't worry, because the behemoths out there are on the same journey as you. And a lot of them haven't actually, they're still wrestling with that question of what should my price point be for this product every single day. Okay, so they got the same challenges as you. And hey ho, we're here to help you. So thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. This is eCommerce Matters. We help e-commerce businesses make pricing decisions. Take care.